Hello everyone, my name is Angela Masova and I'm the founder and trainer at Luxembourg School of Contemporary Etiquette. I'm happy to welcome you again at Lux Etiquette and Service Cafe, the only space of the kind in Luxembourg. Luxembourg is a great model of a host country and it is so diverse, and there are people of so many nations from so many countries living in Luxembourg. And I love meeting new people here because everyone is special and really unique. We all come to this world as we are. We all are different. We have different values. We have different beliefs. We belong to different religious communities. This diversity makes this world a beautiful place to live. Today we'll speak about Islam. So now make a cup of coffee or tea and meet my today's guest. Welcome, Dr. Shams Al-Hajjaji. Thank you for accepting my invitation and being my guest today.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this interview. Really a pleasure, and I hope it's going to be a very good interview. Thank you so much.
I look forward to it indeed. So people attach this phrase, the more I know, the more I realize I know nothing, to Socrates, Greek philosopher. And they also say that he said that I know one thing, that I know nothing. And you are the scholar. And you have dedicated all your life to studying. And what's your story? How did you arrive to where you are now? And why did you dedicate your life to this quite difficult field of studying, law?
Yeah, thank you so much for this introduction. It's really true that the more I know, the more I don't know. I know that I don't know. And that was my motive, because every time I finish a step or a degree or a research, I feel like, no, yet there is many things that I don't know and I need to look further. And I keep looking and I keep looking. And I am so lucky, so many people are looking without having degrees, but I do it, and then I do it for a degree. So I do research and I finish a doctorate degree, I do another research, and I finish another doctorate degree or a master degree. So it's always about the curiosity about the law and how to solve the problems that face people every day. It's not just simply applying the law or what the law is saying. I'm look more is toward what is the law should be, not what is the law is. And that's why have a more motivation to study law and to know more, because as you said, so Socrates said, the more I know that I don't know. And that's the main thing for me, yeah.
And today we'll speak about Islam. And spirituality in general is very diverse and inclusive. Christianity, Judaism, Islam, they are all Abrahamic religions, and we all call upon the same God, the God of Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad. The roots of these religious beliefs is peace. I guess we need to find more understanding and build trust, because we are very, very similar. Speaking about Islam, who is a Muslim?
Okay, so we need first to look at the word Islam. What does it mean? And the word Islam means two words. The first word means submission, so you submit. And the second word is peace. So if you put the two meanings in one word, is to submit, so you get peace. So the Muslim is the person who submits to God's commands, which is mainly in the Quran, and its complementarity rules in the Sunnah. And then he should or she should at the end get the peace that they are looking for. So that's what it means to me, is a Muslim is a person who submits to God's will.
And we are quite similar, I would say. One of the similar things in common is that we all pray. What else could you add to this list of similarities? What do we hold in common to your mind?
Frankly, I think we are identical, not similar. All the religions are identical. One time when I was in Italy doing a research stay at the NATO Defense College, one Italian colleague were debating with me about certain word. He was an atheist. And after we finished the debate, he told me, I'm talking to you as if I am talking to a Catholic priest. And yes, but I'm not really familiar with Catholicism. So I keep searching, okay, so what would be the difference? Why he says that? Why he see me as a Catholic priest? I'm not a priest. I am a scholar working in international law, comparative law. And Islamic law is a side thing that I do, but it's not my main specialization. So I find out that that there is few differences between us, and this is related to spiritual things and religious things that we cannot decide like the final word in it, like how God created Jesus, how Jesus was, did he died or not, or the question is, was Jesus is a human or a prophet or not for the Jewish, or Muhammad is a prophet or not. This is questions that God has decided. So either you believe in it or you don't believe in it, so take it or leave it. But for the rules itself inside it, we don't know. We are mainly similar. And if you look in the Quran, the first story in the Quran is about Adam. And God, when he commanded him not to eat from the tree. Since I was a kid, they will keep us, tell us, it was an apple. But the Quran never say what was the fruit is. Because it doesn't matter what the fruit is. A matter is that God prohibit you from eating from this tree. This could be apple, could be beach, could be whatever. It's not the question. It's just to follow the commands. And the same thing, if you look now, the major difference that people say, oh, the Muslims don't drink wine or drink alcohol, right? But at the early Islamic days, alcohol was permitted to the Muslims. But the early Muslims misuse this right. And they start to fight. And when they fight, God say, okay, no, there is no longer, no one can drink, because the devil is going to use this to you to get in disputes. And this should be against my will. So the problem is not what the substance or what the thing that you don't eat or you don't drink or you don't act. The problem is, do you follow the commands or not? So we all the religions should their follower follow the commands. And that's how I see it.
That's interesting. And coming back to scriptures and the holy texts, Jewish people, they have the Torah and Old Testament, and the Christians, they have New Testament and Old Testament. And in Islam, you have your holy text, Quran.
Yes.
And the Quran was delivered 1,400 years ago.
Yes.
And to read the Quran, you need to learn Arabic, because that's the language in which it was delivered.
Yes.
And it's quite a science to read and pronounce the words and letters of Quran. So is it translated to other languages? And how do you manage to keep the spirit, what you have just mentioned, of Quran, and not to go to its literal meaning, like in words?
That's really a very good question. The Quran is in Arabic. And if you want to do the prayers, the readings for dua or something like that, it should be in Arabic. And the Quran is translated to almost all the language around the world. And we don't consider this as a translation to the Quran. We consider it as an interpretation in that language. So it is the interpretation of the translator to the Quran, because God's words are very precise and very delicate, and it could have different meanings that can change from time to time, from incident to incident. So when the translator is translating the word, he translates what he believes or she believes to be the right word or the right meaning to this word. But this is not always the case. So you take it as God said it. And also because we cannot change the Quran. So the Quran is not said by, Muhammad was the sound of the Quran, not the one who said it. Okay? Like, he's not one who believes that God said that. And this could be the Sunnah, but not the Quran. The Quran is the God wording said by Muhammad. And the Muslim believes that it's a miracle. So Moses has his stick, his hand, and Jesus used to raise the dead, cure the sick, telling people what they hide in their home. But Muhammad didn't have the same miracle as the other prophets. So his miracle was that book. And this is the challenge. So we as Arab native, we cannot say it. Even if some people say, oh, you can say it, we cannot. From many perspectives. So the Quran, for example, is a language and literature. So when you ask an expert in the language and literature, they will tell you, we cannot say it, the experts. And from the perspective of the legal perspective, it's also really complicated legal texts. So, yeah, you can find really complicated texts. It's very delicate. So, for example, in the inheritance, it's like in 3 verses, they put the whole law. And even I used to study it from my Christian professor in Berkeley, who used to quote these verses from the Quran saying how it's complicated. So the experts in the field of law, the experts in the field of literature said that it's really hard to do it. And it's really hard. And then we also know that this is not Muhammad's word because we have the Sunnah.
Yeah, tell us more about Sunnah. What are they? Are they also verses or are the interpretation of the Quran's verses?
That's a really good question as well. The Sunnah is 2 things. So it's either the Prophet traditions, what he used to act in a certain way, or and this we call the Sunnah al-Fa'aliyya, or the act one, or the Sunnah al-Qawliyya, which is the hadith, what the Prophet used to say. And when you compare, the Quran is God said, and Muhammad said it as a messenger. So like when I send someone like a text message, this is God said it in this form, in a message. So there was no phone, so the God can send you a phone, so he needs someone who says a message. Yeah. So God chooses his person. But then we know that the Muslim knows that he's not making it up, because we have the Sunnah, his words. So we can read what he used to say. And what he used to say is a wise man talking. If you find a wise old man, he can say what the Prophet said in the Sunnah. It's like really doesn't have much rhetoric or complicated verses that we cannot make. It's just a very wise man. So does the Prophet said this as a revelation? This is also a very complicated question. Because, and this is like scholars disagree about it. So whatever the Prophet say, we have to put it under 3 tests. Is it under his authority to legislate? For example, the prayers. So God in the Quran say you have to pray. But the Quran didn't say how much, how many times, how, nothing. So if you want to pray, you have to go to the Sunnah to know how you pray. Also, if you want to pay the zakat, the Quran didn't say how much is the zakat. So you have to go to the Sunnah to know. And some other things like his tradition, like what he used to eat, but doesn't mean that if he doesn't eat it, we don't have to eat it. So for example, he doesn't eat, in the Arabia, he used to eat lizards, snakes, but the Prophet didn't eat them. So this is not banned if you would like to eat a snake. If you want to eat a snake, eat a snake.
Speaking about spirit and not the word.
Yes, exactly, yeah. Yes.
It reminds me of Jewish tradition. They also have Torah and Talmud.
Yes.
So very similar, by the way. In the 6th century, Arabs were worshipping many idols. They were pagans. And Prophet Muhammad called them back from worshipping wealth and power, and he said that there is no God but God.
But only one God.
There is no
God except one God.
Except one God.
Yes.
And what are the pillars of Islam?
So the pillars of Islam are 5. So it's first one is the Shahada, which is the declaration that the person believe in one God, only, no God except one God, and that's Muhammad is the Prophet, is his God, of the God, and to believe in all the Prophet, not to distinguish between them. So don't say I believe in Moses and I don't believe in Jesus, or vis-a-vis believe in Jesus, not believe in Moses, or believe in Muhammad and I don't believe in the other. You cannot say that. And you believe in destiny, good or bad, because it's all from God. and you believe that of the existence of the unseen, like the angels, the devil, the jinn, which is like the other spirits around us that we don't see. To believe in the last day, to believe in the good and bad, and so on. And this is the first one. The second one is to pray. And Muslims pray 5 times a day. And then to fast Ramadan, which by the way just finished yesterday. So كل سنة وأنتم طيبين. And the third is and to pay a zakah, which is, some people mix it with charity, and charity is different from zakah. Zakah is part of the state funding. We can discuss it, but it's more complicated ideas than just the charity. So charity is part of it, but it's not charity. And the last one is for the people who can go to pilgrimage. So not everyone can go. So if you can go, you go. If you don't, it's not a mandatory, but you have to believe that this exists. Even the Prophet himself, he went to pilgrimage in his last year before directly before his death. So this is the 5 main pillars. And this is different because some people distinguish between a Muslim as a religion and Islam as a form of state or Islamic state or something like that. And this is different. It's complicated questions that the contemporary scholars are yet in debate in it.
And being a scholar, you also studied Sharia law. And what's Sharia law? What's the main postulates or ethics in Sharia? And is it obligatory to all Muslim countries?
Okay, so first we need to define what is Sharia.
Yes, please.
And Sharia means the road to the lake.
Okay.
So it's very specific. In Arabic, it's very specific. So Sharia means a road to the lake, or to the, not the lake more, it's to the pure water, the natural water that you can drink. So the Judaism is a Sharia. Christianity, some people say it is not Sharia because it depends heavily on the Judaism, but Judaism is a Sharia. But also, non-believing is a Sharia because it will take you not to the water, but it will take you to the hell from the understanding. So it can be also Sharia. So the term Sharia by itself, using it by itself, is not perfectly accurate. So the right thing is to say Islamic Sharia. So because it is Islamic, the way of the Muslims to go to the water or to go to the heaven. So that's from the meaning thing. Then to go to its Islamic Sharia. What does Islamic Sharia means? So Islamic Sharia is also a complicated question because it's not a set of rules codified thing. It includes the Quran. It's like, if we say it, for example, from the what we call it usul al-fiqh, or the jurisprudence perspective, it includes many sources. So it will have mandatory sources, it will have secondary sources, or primary versus secondary sources. So the primary would be the Quran. So if something is mentioned in the Quran, then we are fine with it and we stop. So don't drink, don't drink. Don't eat pork or the dead. So we don't eat pork and the dead. It's clear in the Quran, doesn't need an interpretation. But then we go to say, God say you have to pray. The Quran doesn't say how you pray, when to pray. It just says that you have to pray. Then we go, if you ask me how to pray, I then, okay, I will tell you the Quran say we have to pray, but we don't have the Quran. Then we go to the second source, which is the Sunnah. And then we go to see what the Prophet said about the prayer, about the zakat, and about the procedures of pilgrimage. We will find it in the Sunnah. But many questions that we arise every day that doesn't have its applications in the Quran and the Sunnah.
So how to make Quran and the Sunnah be living today?
The things that then we resort to the secondary sources. And the secondary sources are too many. Part of them are public policy. So we have a public policy that not to let people do certain way. It doesn't have its source from the Quran, doesn't have source of Sunnah, but it's a public policy. Or the scholars in a certain region will meet and they will decide that we all agree on this rule to be the right rule. And then at that point, everyone should follow this rule. So the scholar agreement. Or we use an analogy, which is, okay, the Prophet or the Quran said this about this incident, and from our understanding, we can apply it to this incident, then we should say it. So for example, some scholar will use this for smoking cigarettes. So the Quran didn't never talk about cigarettes. And it is not haram, and I don't believe it's haram, but because it is bad for the health, so many scholars say it's makruh, which is the second level of haram. And even some scholars say it's haram, which I have some reservation in it, but it could be by scholars say, okay, we believe because it has a harm on the health. It doesn't have any source in the Quran. It doesn't have any source in the Sunnah, directly source. The Prophet didn't say, oh, you cannot smoke, because smoking was not. Maybe drugs used to be at the time, but not smoking. And even he didn't say anything about drugs even. So the thing that's how it works. So it has the sources, and then the scholar met, and then they discuss it, and they deliberate it. If they disagree about it, then we leave it to the public, they should decide about it. Yeah.
In Christianity, there is some hierarchy, let's say, and there is the Pope and other types of priests. And in Islam, do you have any hierarchy? And how unified is the Islamic religion as a form?
Okay, the first point that we need to clarify is Islam doesn't have a centralized authority. The last person...
No hierarchy.
Or hierarchy.
Okay.
The last person who did have an authority that we cannot debate with was the Prophet. And he died 14 centuries ago. So, okay, so what we should do now if we don't have that? Then we have scholars, and then scholars, they write fatwa, and the fatwa could be a paragraph, or it could be a research like the one that I wrote. So this would be, strictly speaking, a fatwa from me, saying should be how this thing should be in that way. And the more you justify, the more you get credibility. The more you put sources, the more you say, here is what I say from the science, from the Quran, from the Sunnah, from the public policy, from all these sources, and how I can deduct that, then it gets authority. It gets authority as a scholarly work, but doesn't get authority to the people. So then the people need to believe in what you're saying. And this is because the Quran was, as I said, it was a miracle. So everyone, if you understand Arabic, you should understand it explicitly or easily. Or at least you could have a notion of what I'm saying. So I'm not talking about really complicated thing, because you know what I'm saying about. And then once the people say, okay, we believe in what Shams said, then what I'm saying takes a form of authority to these people, because they said, okay, we believe that what Shams said represent the core or the right interpretation to the Quran and the Sunnah. And if you look to the jurisprudence we have, for example, for the Sunni Muslim, we have 4 or 5 major Islamic schools that their founders and their followers put a methodology to this school. So for example,
all equal, like equal. You could.
You can follow any one of them.
Follow any.
They will not disagree. Like for example, they will not disagree in God, or they will not disagree in the Prophet, or on what you believe in, or what not seen. They will disagree on things related to how to pray, what would be the sunnah in this, how to clean yourself, how to go to pilgrimage, which is like secondary things. But the core things, they will never disagree.
Okay.
And then each school will put a method. So if you want to follow this school, you should follow this method. So they will put hierarchy. They will say, this hadith, we will take it because of that. With this hadith, we will not take it because of that. And based on that, they will make their judgments and their ideas. So for example, let me give you an example. So the Prophet, for example, said that the woman cannot marry herself. She needs a wali, which is like a father, an older brother, to marry her. So there's three schools of thought say the woman can't. But then there's one school, which is the Hanafi, say, no, the woman can. So when they asked him why, they said because the Prophet's wife did marry a woman to a man without a wali. So we cannot take that hadith, even though the Prophet said it, because now we know that someone of the Prophet accompanier, which is his wife, Zawjat al-Rasul, like contradict this hadith. So we now know it's really not mandatory, but just an advice. So if a woman would like to marry herself, then she can marry herself. If a woman doesn't want to, then the woman can do. And the same thing applies. So since that, for example, the Egyptian law adopts that, right? And then the woman in Egypt can marry herself without a wali. So if she wants her father to be there, it's fine. If not, that's also fine.
And let's go spiritual a little bit.
Yes.
So the core idea of Christianity is unconditional love. And what's the core idea of Islam?
All these religions share the same thing. But the idea of Islam is more to be a moderate. So God sent Jesus to put an end to the materialism of the Judaism people, not Judaism itself. So he puts in spirituality, love, who has no sin, throw her with a stone. But then, so to make the balance between the materialism and spiritualism, then Islam came to be the middle. So it is not, it is part of its spiritual. So you can find the Sufism, for example. They are very spiritual people looking towards the spiritual part of Islam. And also you cannot forget the Salafis, who are more materialistic, very strict, want to be very, what do you call it, like very Orientalistic to the ideas, to the text. But the Sufi, for example, will say more spiritualism, more for meditation, for the love, for forgiveness. And so both of them will consider the Islam. So the Islam is the middle between the same. It's not only spiritualism. People live in the desert, leaving the people. You should live with the people to guide them, and also not to be very harsh to people, saying that the punishment is the only way to cure the society. So it's something middle between the two religious ideas.
Ah, that's so interesting. Nowadays, there are a lot of misconceptions about our religions, and the misconceptions come from ignorance. It's critical that we understand each other now on a personal level, on a human level, so that we find more understanding. And some people say that like one of the examples of misconceptions about Islam is that Muslim women are oppressed. And I know that on the contrary, Muslim women in many countries of the world, they hold active position in politics, science and economy. And the first university was founded by a Muslim woman. What was her name?
Fatima al-Firi? Yeah.
So what are other misconceptions which you want to break today?
There is many misconceptions that I would like to break today. Toward what you said about women, I think Islam was the first religion to grant the woman the right to divorce. So it's not even not by mutual consent. So it's not the man, okay, we will divorce. It is just even by the woman's only will. So if the woman no longer like her man, she can go to the court and say, I don't longer like this person, and I would like to get divorced, which is called now in the Egyptian law the khula. And it's
So
granted.
was this freedom given by offered by, let's say, Prophet Muhammad, or
That's true. It was the Prophet Muhammad. A woman came to the Prophet, and she told him that she doesn't have any problem with her husband, except she no longer loves him. So he told her to return him the gifts that he gave to her, and he should divorce her. So it's 14 centuries ago, the woman has a right to get rid of their husbands, or what I call it, get rid of this idiot. If he's getting an idiot, so you have the right to get rid of him. But the thing that people start to look deeper to, okay, but the man can marry four. But the thing that is not the man can marry four. It's not that simple. Like in my whole life, I saw just in my whole life living in Egypt, just two men marrying, just two, not four even. Like,
it's another misconception, I would say.
It's like mainly it's for economic, social reasons. People living in farms, and the people know each other, and he knows that this woman is not going to marry someone else. And the idea in Islam, and this will take me to the second thing. The idea of Islamic State, it doesn't depend on the state much. The state is not like in the West now. They understand that if you have no job, you go to Adam, and the Adam pay you unemployment. It is not the same thing. It's based on the family. So if you are unemployed, then the family is responsible to pay to you. So everyone, man or woman, should be affiliated to a family, small, and then to a tribe as a big, and then as the head of the tribes, then they form a state, which for the mutual things, mutual defense, to care to the people who doesn't have families. But if you have a family and there is an opportunity to join a family, then this should have the first priorities. So it's not like for the man desires, because if the man would like desire, he would simply, the Muslim community will find like a red district, and then people, okay, they will have what they want for money. But it's not simply, it's more about the family, and people don't get distracted. And I'm not also defending that. It's also in Islam, marriage is a contract. It's definitely, there's part spiritual, but it's a contract. So women can write whatever they want. So if she wants to write that you should pay me this amount every month, then that's a contract, and a man has to pay it. She can also say you cannot marry any other woman. She can limit his right. And there is definitely many historical events that happens this issue. And in Egypt, for example, the marriage is a heavily debated contract. So people keep debating about it. But ironically, people in Egypt never debate if the man can marry more or not. They just debate the financial parts, what the man should pay, what the man shouldn't pay. But they never debate the man, we will limit your right to do that. And then we also, from the idea of a state, some people have a misconception, oh, the Muslim want all of people to convert to Islam. This is not really what a Muslim wants, even if they become a majority in any country. Because Egypt didn't become a fully Muslim until 5th century from the Muslim arrival to Islam. Because Muslims really don't interested in applying their law, and the freedom of religion is a core principle in the Quran.
In the Quran, there is a verse saying that there is no compulsion in religion, and Prophet Muhammad didn't turn anybody to join Islam.
Yes.
Not, as you said, it's not compulsory, so the principle is convey but do not convert, right?
Yes.
Religious is always a choice, and we see that sacred scriptures have been abused during our long history, and not only in Islam, in other religions as well, like Crusades or Ku Klux Klan or ISIS. What do you think are the roots of this abuse, and what should we do to prevent it in the future?
I cannot talk about, for that part, I cannot talk for other religions. I will just talk about what I believe we can do for the Muslim to prevent that from happening. Because the ISIS or the other groups, they are using a really old interpretation to the Quran and the Sunnah. understanding. So, for example, in Islam, the Prophet didn't build a jail. We don't have in the Islamic legal criminal system the idea of jail, of locking people in a building for life. And that's for two main reasons. Because first, because this is against the idea of freedom, which Islam convey to its followers. Muslim should be free from any mental barriers or physical barriers. So you don't believe that someone can harm you in any way. So you free yourself from the idols. This God can harm you in this way, or this person can harm you in this way, and you believe that God only is the one who can harm you or benefit you. So the idea of jail is against the idea of Islamic criminal system. So what is used Islam during that time is that, okay, if you steal, we're not going to enslave you, because at that time was enslaving the thief was a common practice. But if you are poor, we're going to release you, and the state will pay. If you need the money, if you are a slave and you steal, then the one who's responsible is the master, not the slave, and so on. So it's giving more mercy than applying the punishment. But the thing that so if you take this today, you don't have this idea, and we have this modern contemporary criminal science.
Some people use religious views to torture, to terrorize, to punish.
Because they take the old interpretation without taking the second part of it, which we give the benefit of doubt, because the idea is not to punish in Islam. And if you look, for example, the major crime in the Quran is terrorism. And God put out like a huge punishment for that in our earthly life. So if a terrorist is committed terrorism, so Islam puts a capital punishment. But then it says in the second verse, it's like, so if you find them, just kill them. In the second verse, but if they ask for forgiveness and they stop doing that, then forgive them. So from one side, it say this is the punishment if they continue committing this crime, but the idea is not punishing them. The idea is that they should stop and they should do good, and then if they do that, then forgive them. But they just take one verse and they leave the other, and so on. So you can do that in everything. And the idea is not like when I study law, people keep saying, okay, if we apply very harsh punishment, we will not have crimes. But this is not really true, because since the first day of human on earth, people kill each other. Like the sons of Adam kills each other. So we know that it's not going to stop. And when I used to work as a prosecutor, I used to prosecute every week at least 2 homicide cases. And it was not Cairo. I was working in Upper Egypt, in the south. So it's really normal. It's people committing it. They're not going to stop it. So the idea of what would be a more harsh punishment than the capital punishment. So it's not working. So that we need to work on a different solution than the punishment. And that's what contemporary Islamists don't really understand. And that's why I'm trying to write in the Islamic. So my field is not really strict Islamic law. My field is international law and comparative law. But I write when I find there is some misconception about things, and I write and I say, okay, here is what I believe to be the right side of the Islamic jurisprudence.
Yeah. You write articles, scientific articles, and here are the examples of the journals where you could find the articles of Dr. Al-Hajjaji. Dr. Al-Hajjaji, you mentioned that Islam or Muslims, they are like a tribe culture, and you're like a family culture, more family oriented. And in business, if you want to deal with representatives of Islam, what are the tips you could share with our viewers how to deal with business partners in Islamic countries?
I think you should first look for a trustworthy person. Don't try to it's not really an open society, so you need to know someone who can introduce. This one should be trustworthy person, and this person will lead you and ask you through the what you can do, what you cannot do, because there is. My grandfather used to say a word. It's really funny one. In the countries that no one knows you, get naked and run. Because no one knows you, so who going to know who are you and doing it? So that's, some people have this mentality. So you really need to have someone who's trust before you go and do business or acquire a property in a Islamic country, or because that person, if you trust him and he's really trustworthy, then he will lead you to the right thing and what to do, what not to do, what would be the obstacles to do. Also because, and this mostly should be through, so don't go to a person for the first sight, so see person a second and hear different advices from different person. Also, I would advise them not to try to put all their investment one time in one thing, just to try step by step. So if they're going to open a restaurant, so don't try to do it a very fancy, put all your investment in that restaurant from the beginning, because there is many obstacles that can face you, and then you don't know whole people to trust, who to trust and who not to trust. But and once you build this connection, and then you become part of a family of connections, then you can continue to open businesses and to expand your business in any Muslim country. Yeah.
Would people need an advice of people like yourself, like a legal advice from you, for example?
About what?
About how to deal, how to not to break the law in Islamic country.
I think, like for example, in Egypt, Egyptian law and legal system has a lot of tolerance to foreigners, and I would assume that most of the Muslim country will have the same tolerance from foreigners, non-Muslim foreigners, I guess. For example, in Egypt, like the average person will wear full clothes, but then if the tourist will wear a short, people will, okay, he's a tourist, he can wear a short, that's fine. Or a woman would like to wear whatever comfortable clothes to her in her culture, then people will tolerate that. But once you become part of that, then this tolerance step by step will start to clarify to you that this is not the appropriate clothes, or this is not the appropriate act in a certain way. And also the Arab and the Muslim are sensitive, so you like what Western would consider like a frank, or it will be like to them like more like a rude or like not really acceptable. So you should choose your words precisely and very delicately when you are talking with them. That's mostly my advice to anyone. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah. And now I've got a few questions from our viewers.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
They are, for me, they're really interesting, and I look forward to hearing the answer on the. So the first question is, what does Allah Akbar mean, and do Arabic Christians say it when they pray?
Allahu Akbar means God is great.
Okay.
So it's really that simple. God is great. And it's used in the prayers. So when Muslims start their prayers, they start with Allahu Akbar. So God is great. Can
we say that it's common for all religious people?
It is common, and I think there is nothing wrong with this to non-Muslim to say it. So God is great. But I think that it has this sound in Arabic, so that's why it's okay. And also it's also connected when the Muslim go to fight or something, they use Allahu Akbar because now we're going to start the fight or something like that. So it's also connected to a Muslim to the fight but it's not the fight, it's just they start to pray.
Hearing the sound, people misuse and misunderstand the meaning. And God is great. It sounds absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And what do you have to? Why do you have to pray facing certain direction?
Okay, we need to look. This is the same as Judaism. So the Judaism, they face to Jerusalem when they pray, and the Muslim use at the beginning of Islam, they used to pray during Jerusalem. But then God decided that it should be changed because now there is a new religion that has to be separate. And then God chose to the Muslim to pray in the direction of Kaaba or Mecca. And now we are praying to that. But the idea of praying to a Qibla or to a certain direction is not really restricted. Like, so what if I don't know how to pray, where to pray? So God put it really clear that it's not really important which direction you pray to. It's important that you pray to me. So wherever you look, I am there. And this is really explicitly in the Quran. أَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. So wherever you look, so God is. Wherever you look the direction, this is the direction of God. But then, if you can know the direction of Mecca, so you can distinguish yourself and you know that I am doing this place, then that is. And also because Mecca, in the Islamic understanding, the Kaaba, it was built by Abraham. Son Ismail.
It was bought. A piece of land was bought by the son of Abraham.
What happens? Okay, so what happens that Abraham had two wives.
Yes. Okay.
Sarah and Hajar, and Abraham used to live in the Levant, Jerusalem, this part of the Middle East, and same thing as Sarah. But then he moved to Egypt, and then he was gifted from the first Egyptian pharaoh, his second wife, Hajar. But then God ordered him that he need to take his wife away from Levant to this location that we know now as Mecca or Kaaba. And he left them there. And then it was a miracle that after he leaves his wife and his newborn, there was a fountain of water that was break out from the land. And it's called Zamzam, and it still exists until today. And then, because this arid land, there's no water, and then it was just Hajar and her son, so people, the tribes around the place start to come and ask her to live with them. So they let them living there. And when Ismail grew up, then Abraham came back. And God at that point orders them to build the Kaaba beside that fountain of water that they find. So you can find the Mecca, the Kaaba until today, and then you find this fountain of water beside it. So this is the story in brief. Yeah.
The picture created by Hollywood and some media is that Islam is an Oriental project. Is that true? And what's the situation in the world now? And what's the percentage of Arabic countries, Islamic countries, and non-Arabic countries?
Okay, so we should know that the biggest 5 Islamic countries are not Arab countries. The first 5.
What are they?
They are Indonesia. They are not Arab. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Nigeria. So these 5 countries are
non-Arabic.
None of them are Arabic.
Okay.
And the 6th would be the Egypt, but the 5th are Nigeria. So,
this is another misconception.
Some philosopher start to connect. Okay, people are Muslim because of the geography. So we are Muslim because we are living in the Middle East. So, okay, but we could be Judaism in the Middle East as well. We can be Christian in the Middle East because all the Abrahamic are in the Middle East. But they don't look at it that way. You just like they look to the Muslim. The idea of Arabic is like if you look to the Egyptian, for example, like we should speak other language than Arabic. But the Egyptians choose to speak Arabic from long time ago. the Turkish, the Persian, the other indigenous language, for example, for the people in North Africa, it's called Amazigh. So they have their own language, the tribes that live in North Africa. This was considered like indigenous languages. So you can still continue to talk your language, but then when we go to prayers, when we have something in common, is Arabic. So the Arabic is a form of communication among us. Like if you look now in Europe, Europe has like 23 or 24 languages. And this is really complicated because if we want to communicate, we need a lot of translators to communicate. We need a lot of translation to translate, interpreters. But the thing that, okay, well, for the Islam and Arabic, everyone should speak Arabic so everyone can communicate. It's really hard language. My first teaching job was to teach Arabic. So I know it's really hard. I thought it's really easy because I'm Arab, but once I start to teach it to non-Arab, I start to know the problem in pronunciation of many letters. Like, for example, we have the dad that doesn't exist. So if you would like to say a police officer, you will say dabit, which is like, okay, like how to say that. And then sin and sad, which looks same. It's like S, but it's not S, it's sin and sad. And the thing that also Arabic, because some Arab misconcept that this Arabic is not, definitely it's a race, so the Arab as a race, so I would be an Arab as a race, but also anyone who born speaking Arabic as a native is Arab, because it's really complicated. Like when I tell you you are native English or native Ukrainian or Russian, you will have a certain trend. But for the Arab to be a native, it means that you can really read complicated sentence or complicated words that it could take years and years and years for a native to read it. And also because old Arabic used to be without dots. So, for example, the sin and sheen, in the old Arabic, they used to be written the same. But later on, because there was a lot of conversion to Islam, and many foreigners start to convert to Islam, so they start to put the dots. So if you tell someone in the old Arabic, put dots over the letters, it's an insult, because you are insulting me. I know the difference between the sin and sheen. I don't need that. And when I was during my bachelor degree, and because the exam was 3 hours and it's law, and you have to write a lot, I used to write like 2 batches of my exam. I never write a dot in my exam. I just write and write and write. I never go back to put what is seen and what is sheen and what is gim and what is. He should understand what I'm writing. The professor should understand, and they understand and they give me good grades. But I cannot do that in any other language. And this is something not because I'm smart and not because I'm presidently. No, it's because something that's related to being native, that you're born speaking language, the Arabic since you were a kid. You could be whatever nationality. You can be Russian, you can be Western, but once you start speaking it from the language, then you will have this talent that you get.
The world is now globalized, and how do you see the future of Islam in this globalized world?
Frankly, I'm seeing, like there is now a major fight against Islam. As you can see it, like they try to divinalize Islam, putting it in the form of the devil. And the one who is feeding this war against Islam is, in my opinion, is an idiot, because Islam is like a fire. The more you feed it, the more it's going to explore and get more. And the idea is that they keep feeding it by this, and it's getting more and more. So I hear many people, Western people, non-Muslims, say, okay, Islam is going to win at the end. And that's what I really believe. But when that's the end, when it will happen, this is also because let's look to the Judaism, the history of the Jew in Egypt. They were discriminated, they were incarcerated by the old Egyptians, the pharaohs. But then God always with the people who are the weak. So if you are weak, then you know that the God is your side. From that perspective, if you look at it from that side, so if you oppress some person, you know that the God is his side.
And the word Muslim is traced back to Abraham.
Yes, it is. Yes, because he's the one who, also Muslim understandings, that's the one who people who are submit to God, and the Muslim believes that Abraham who called us the Muslimin or the people who submit to God, they don't make quarrels or something like that. Yeah. The country of Islam is not is non-Islam. So. So the believer or non-believer, so the Judaism, Christianity, Islam, they are all believers. They believe in something.
Men in Islam, do they take care of children?
Of course.
Or just women?
No, of course. The Prophet say, "Khayrukum khayrukum li-ahli." So the best of you is the best to his family, and I am, the Prophet said, I am the best to my family. So he used to take care of his children, his grandchildren. Yeah, and he used to work at home. I'm working at home as well, so yeah. So I try to follow this model. Yes, so it should be. So it's not like a rigid thing, and also because the idea is that the man is responsible for the house. So you cannot leave the house and say, okay, she will take care or they will take care. You have to take care and see everything. If they can do it, they do it. If they cannot do it, then you can intervene and help. And also the man should support for the family. So the idea of in the Westerns that half-half, this doesn't exist in Islam. It's like the man should take care of the house for the main things. If they want extra things and he cannot do it, then he cannot do it. But the main things like the food, the house, the bills, rent, all these main things, should be the man paying it.
Is that true that Sharia law in some Islamic countries is applied for ruling family issues mainly? And there is the public law part and the Sharia law, which is mainly for family issues.
Yes, this is due to the colonization. So we start to have this different thing, and because okay, so if you look to Islamic Sharia, it's about jurisprudence. So we don't have codified law. And after the end of the colonization, for example, in Egypt in 1940s, 50s, it ended in 1956 almost. But in 1948, Egyptians made their current civil law, which was driven from the Islamic Sharia, and it takes from different schools. So it doesn't represent one school of thought from the Sharia, but it's just driven from different school of thought through technical scholarly work that has been done by Sanhuri. But the things that related to, and also because Islam is depending heavily on legal pluralism. So as I told you before, Islam is not interested in imposing itself on other religion, and the same thing, it doesn't really interested in applying its rules to other religion. So if the Christianity believes that no divorce, then you are good, no divorce, we are fine. But if they say we can divorce, then okay, so that's fine. The most Islamic law really doesn't want to impose to say no, you can't divorce, or oh, the Christian men can marry 4 women. It doesn't really interested in doing that to other religion. So Islam is really depending heavily on legal pluralism. So an example, so Muslim in Islam in Egypt, they still apply the Hanafi school of thought, jurisprudence. And non-Muslims, they can apply, we still apply the Judaism or the Christianity in the courts. And even for foreigners, so if a French couple, they want to divorce, then we apply the French law. Or the English law or the American law. They bring the law and say, okay, this is our rules and we want divorce based on this rule. And then the Egyptian judge should apply these rules. But this idea gets more complicated with the public law and the criminal law, because still we don't have, for example, a common understanding to what is the contemporary understanding of Islamic criminal law, for example. We don't have the institutions that we prepare for that. We don't have the rehabilitation institutions that prepare for that. So we're still working on that. Same thing for politics and legal institutions related to the parliament and the thing, because there's also some debates whether these institutions like the parliament or democracy really represent the Islamic understanding of public consultation. So and so on. So yeah, if you look to the family law, yes. But if you look to the other, no, still public law applies to everyone.
Really, there are so many new things for myself, and I hope for our viewers as well. The last question for today is about happiness. I ask this question to all my guests. What is happiness for you, and how to be a happy Muslim, a happy Christian, a happy Jewish, a happy whatever, independent of the views you follow? How to be happy?
I think happiness it is not something connected to something. It is something inside you. So it's something from within. It's not you buy a new car or you get a new phone or a new house will make you happy. It's just something inside you that make you happy. And from my perspective as a Muslim, I think the more connected to God is make you happy. And as one scholar said, if you have a car and this car is go to the mechanics 5 times a day, would the car have any problem? So definitely the car would not have any problem because the one who manufacturing it is taking care of it 5 times a day. So the same thing, when you have your relationship with God in a certain way and you continue to have this God on a daily basis, then you could have this from within. But I don't find that the happiness in making more money or having a new car or a new house. Also, sometimes I find also some happiness in my work, especially when I publish an article and I feel, okay, now I have something that people can benefit from it after I die or something. So
some accomplishments.
Some accomplishments. But also all this happiness thing is very temporary in nature. But the ones that make you satisfied and more comfort is related to your connection to the Creator. Yeah.
Dr. Al-Hajjaji, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Sharing all your views and for giving us so many insights on what Islam is and what relationships between different religions could be and how to build this trust and understanding. Thank you very much for being my guest, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you so much. Me too. It's a great pleasure, and I thank you for watching, and thank you for your audience. And it's a great pleasure being with you today, and hope to see you soon as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Each of us has a responsibility for the lives we live and for the world we share. We all seek similar things like peace, kindness. We all hold in common. What we really need to do to seek understanding without losing our different selves. Thank you for being with us and hope to see you again.